Welcome to the second festive episode of Dear Deirdre. This one's about coming home for Christmas, spending it with your families and with partners, and why that can be stressful and how to overcome that. So I'm Lewis, one of the peer reps at OTR. My pronouns are he, him. And do you guys just want to introduce yourselves?
Yeah,
you go first, Naomi.
I'm Naomi, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm also a peer rep at OTR.
And I'm Sammi, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm an engagement worker at OTR.
Right, cool. So yeah, did either of you have any sort of thoughts about why it's so stressful sort of spending it with family coming home at the minute?
It's a difficult one to talk about, isn't it? Because obviously normally we'd be so used to not being around our families as much, whether we're kind of going to work, going to school, or whether we're at uni and living away from home. But this year, obviously, it's been very different, and actually we've already spent a lot of time with families. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what impact that has, whether people have kind of gotten used to being with their families more now and feel quite comfortable with it, or whether everyone's just a bit like kind of sick of it, thinking I can't do this anymore. So yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see whether the year we've had brings new difficulties. But yeah, for me, I think generally, I feel like with Christmas it can be easy to feel quite isolated because there's this pressure to be at home with your family, not really leave the house, and I think that can be quite difficult. It can kind of throw your routine out as well. So yeah, there's many things to think about really, but I think family is definitely a big one.
Yeah, I would say that in terms of like what you were saying about like feeling lonely, even though like you could be surrounded by people, so like you could be in a house with like 5 or 6 other people, but you can still feel lonely at the same time, which is quite like a weird feeling.
Definitely. Yeah, it is really strange, isn't it? I think when I think of like past Christmas days and stuff, you kind of feel like you're in your own little bubble. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't really kind of, over the Christmas period, I don't really talk to friends as much as I would normally in terms of messaging people. I just kind of feel like stuck in my house.
Yeah.
Another thing I was thinking as well, with this year particularly, it's going to be stressful trying to decide, if you are spending time with your family, who it is that you're spending time with. Because at the moment, as this is being filmed, they've got the free house bubble rule, but I don't know if that's actually going to stick, because other countries have gone into lockdown and stuff. So I think a big stressor is trying to decide what family members you spend your time with, because, for example, my nan's living on her own, so she doesn't want to be on her own, but she's got 3 daughters. So she's going to have to decide which of her 3 daughters she wants to spend the time with the most. It's just a very awkward situation. Yeah.
I think especially as well if you've got like maybe like parents who are split and that kind of thing, deciding like, especially this year when you kind of feel even more like you have to choose. So you kind of have to like commit as well. So it's not necessarily just like, oh, I can go there in the morning, there in the evening, that kind of thing. You do feel kind of like forced to stay in contact with one more than the other. I think that can make it quite stressful as well. Like sort of already, if you were locked in with a family who maybe you don't get on with as well, at least you could sort of go out, spend time with your friends, or go shopping to a meal or something like that. But that kind of like escape in some sense has been taken away. So I think more than anything this year, sort of preparing for that is more important.
Definitely. I think it's tricky as well in terms of, young people, unless you're kind of university student age, obviously living with your parents at home. And obviously, although, at the moment, the kind of free households thing is allowed and everything, I think, it's still very understandable to feel anxious about that, thinking like, am I going to give it to one of my grandparents or something? And I guess it can feel a bit out of your control, I guess, if it's kind of your parents' decision how they're going to do things and who they're going to have around and stuff. So I think that brings a lot of anxiety with it as well, thinking like, you know, oh, my grandparents going to come round and then I'm going to give it to them and stuff like that. So yeah, it's really difficult, isn't it? Not just deciding who to kind of bubble with, but also like, you know, potentially giving it to other people.
Yeah, I think as well, sort of like potentially having people in your bubble who you don't necessarily get along with as well. So whereas normally you could sort of avoid them, like say you have family who are coming down for Christmas and you can like keep out the way to sort of wait it out. I think if you've got sort of members of your family who might like sort of, I don't know, have like old feuds or be like homophobic or racist or something like that, and that sort of stuff comes up at Christmas, you're now sort of stuck in the house with them, so that sort of becomes more of an issue as well.
Definitely, yeah, I 100% agree with that. Yeah, that's something I definitely find quite difficult. But yeah, like you said, now with kind of the situation we're in, it's kind of more difficult to kind of take a break from that and kind of get out of the house if we want to and kind of cool off, if you like. It kind of feels like we're more kind of all mushed together into one house and not really able to do much else.
Yeah, definitely. Especially I think as well, like in terms of like relationships and bringing it back to that, I think as well, like at that point, because like for me and my girlfriend as well, like we've got to a point where we're like, okay, so do we just spend the whole Christmas together now? Like, have you got to commit to sort of spending the whole Christmas break with each other? Or do you just go and not see your partner for that amount of time at Christmas? Because then you have to sort of pick between your families as well.
Yeah, I've done the opposite of that. Because my partner, he lives all the way in Kent. So we kind of didn't have the choice. We're kind of stuck doing this long distance thing over Christmas. And I know that there's a lot of people in my position as well, like uni students, that have probably not seen their partner for months and months, and they're not going to be able to do it over Christmas. And yeah, that's very frustrating. Because if, for example, if he lived just down the road from me, I'd be all about him staying with me for the whole week of Christmas, or me going to stay with him for the whole week of Christmas. But yeah, it's just the whole long distance thing over Christmas is very difficult.
Yeah, because it is kind of all or nothing, I feel. Because like my girlfriend at the minute is in like Plymouth, and I think that sort of having to be like, okay, so we're just gonna move from one to the other does sort of add like a whole new thing to it, whereas normally you could sort of regulate it a bit easier.
Yeah.
I think kind of relationships at Christmas can be quite tricky in normal times anyway, because like when I think back to kind of having a partner around Christmas, you know, obviously Christmas has always seemed to be like family time. Obviously if you're living with your partner, that's a bit different because, you know, you formed your own family in that way. But you know, if you're living separately and kind of you're still living at home, I always kind of felt like, you know, should I go and see my boyfriend over Christmas, or should I kind of respect it as family time, you know, in the way that everyone talks about it? So I think it can be quite difficult to make that decision during normal times as well. But yeah, obviously with COVID, it's made things so much more tricky in terms of that and making those decisions.
Yeah, because if you visit your partner during this time, or they visit your family, that's another household that you've got to incorporate into this free household bubble. So which family member are you not going to see because you want to see your partner, or which family are you going to, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it can be quite easy to feel like you're sort of in the middle of it then, and that you're sort of having to, like, there's a lot of pressure to choose where or not you go. I think if you're on the same page and you both sort of agree Christmas is family time, or we're going to see stuff like in advance, that makes it a lot easier to sort of talk about it in advance, prepare for it. But otherwise, if you don't necessarily agree and there's sort of pressure to spend that when you'd rather spend it with your family or the other way around, that can also make it quite stressful if you haven't like arranged it in advance, and sort of set boundaries kind of makes it a lot easier too.
Yeah.
What other sort of ways would you say like is like on top of making boundaries and sort of being like, oh, Christmas Day is reserved for family, but I can see you Christmas Eve maybe, and like that sort of negotiating? What other ways would you say sort of makes it easier to spend time with family at Christmas?
I think taking breaks really important. I feel like don't feel like you have to be constantly with your family throughout the Christmas period, because I think that can be quite much, especially since we've already spent so much time together this year anyway. I think allow yourself to have breaks, even if it's just going for a walk, or even if it's just sitting in your room for a little bit, or even if it's just like taking a 5-minute break in the toilet, like, you know, just kind of make a little bit of time for yourself when you need it, so you don't get a bit overwhelmed, especially if you're having if you've got conflicting views and opinions with family members as well. Quite taxing on you.
Yeah, it's definitely worth having time to breathe.
I think as well, if you've got, like you were saying, particularly problematic family members that may have racist or homophobic views, I think it's also important to stand your ground as well. So if you don't want them coming round, or you don't feel comfortable with them being there with their views, you should make that known. Whether it's you that has control of who's coming round or not, you should definitely make, like, if your parents are making all the choices about who comes round, and there is someone that you really don't want there, just tell them, and I'm sure they'd understand your view and why you think that they shouldn't be there at Christmas.
Yeah, definitely, because I think it is also really important to like call people out when, like, especially if like it's things like comments are made at the dinner table and that sort of thing. A lot of the time it is due to sort of lack of education, or like what they're used to, or just not being exposed to anything in the first place. So actually calling them out, like not necessarily in like a conflict way, because then that sort of makes it more defensive. And then, but like actually having like sort of things like facts to back up what you're saying, or like having a reasonable conversation and just explaining why like their views aren't correct and that kind of thing can really help, because obviously that's how you sort of make change. And even if you don't necessarily change their mind, if the other people at the dinner table who are listening and sort of get their minds changed at the same time, means that you're no longer on your own, and then they can sort of stand up as well.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I was thinking when Naomi was saying about kind of letting family members know if there's someone in particular you kind of would rather not be there, even if it's still a case where they do still kind of come around for Christmas. At least you've kind of made your opinion known, and you've kind of said, you know, you can kind of warn and say, if they start kind of, you know, making these comments that I really don't agree with, then, you know, I am going to say something, or I am going to take a break and leave, like just kind of making it known what your reaction might be, and just say it's up to you then if you'd like them round still. But I think standing your ground is really important.
Yeah, definitely, because I think as well, like the main thing from everything that I saw was like being prepared. Like if you know that, for example, like at Christmas it's going to be stressful because this person's going to make a comment or something, because they always do after a drink or something like that, prepare for what to do in that eventuality. Like prepare by telling people around you and letting them know. Prepare by like, if this happens, what's my escape plan? How do I change the topic? You know, how do I get out of that situation? Or like actually coming into it rather than just playing it by ear. If you can sort of think about why it's going to be stressful, and then have a sort of plan prepared for how you're going to deal with that at the time, it can make it a lot easier, especially if it's telling people you live with, because then if something happens, they're sort of prepared to back you up as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think that kind of applies for many things as well, doesn't it? For example, if you kind of struggle with anxiety or low mood, kind of, I think preparation is always great to make sure, you know, during the Christmas period that you feel ready to kind of deal with anything that you're struggling with, and know that you've still got people around you to talk to. So yeah, I definitely think preparation is always good for pretty much everything.
Yeah, definitely, because it takes that like surprise out of it then, and you sort of have like a structure to it, so you know what to anticipate.
No, definitely. I guess another thing about Christmas as well, isn't it? It feels like the structure to our lives just goes, and it's just day after day, and we can't even remember whether it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It's just kind of an endless amount of time, and, you know, services and things aren't open as they would normally be and stuff. So yeah, I think being prepared is definitely really key, and knowing that, you know, there is still support available even during Christmas.
Maybe even making something that's like kind of like a schedule. Obviously, no one has any structure in their lives over the festive period anyway. But maybe even just making your own little one, like saying, "Oh, I might go on a walk at 3 o'clock on Christmas Day," or "Oh, I'll have breakfast, lunch, and dinner here, here, and here." That might just help you to prepare for dealing with your time during Christmas.
Yeah, and I think it's also worth as well, like managing your expectations, because we said a lot about that in our last video. But also I think that the whole idea of having like really high expectations for Christmas, like everyone sort of like really hypes up the idea of like a family Christmas. It's got to be like all the adverts and media and everything like that. You always see like this happy family Christmas thing, and this image of like it needs to be like this. And I feel like a lot of the time that can lead to like sort of people celebrating with gritted teeth and being like, no, we're going to have a happy Christmas. And it like takes that sort of enjoyment out of it, and then it makes it easier for things to like explode when it doesn't go wrong, because people are trying to bottle it up over the holidays.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Yeah, it's like there is this kind of idea of the perfect Christmas, and I guess like, you know, we do Christmas every year, so I don't think, you know, we've got many Christmases to come. I don't think there should be big pressure if, you know, Christmas Day doesn't go the way that you'd ideally like it to. There's always next year, and you know, this year has been really strange and not normal at all, so I think allowing for that is really important, and not kind of putting too much pressure on it.
Well, yeah, especially as in like if things have also like not gone well other years in the past, doesn't mean necessarily it's going to be the same this year. It is like a case of sort of not like looking at it almost realistically and being like, okay, if this is like, if at Christmas like fights tend to happen, then yeah, it's not going to be like a happy Christmas, but manage the expectations, and then it's less likely to sort of explode as well, especially if you've prepared in advance and sort of set boundaries with different people of like what to expect.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but when I think about back on Christmas, it all just kind of merges into one. I don't kind of think back and think, oh, you know, 2017 was a great Christmas, but gosh, 2015 was a nightmare. It all just blends into one for me. So even if it doesn't go perfectly, it's likely that in the future, you know, you might not pick it out and think, oh God, that was a terrible year.
Well, yeah, and also like it is the case of like there's more than just one day to Christmas, even though people say like it's all about like the 25th and that. Like you'll have celebrations with people, like you can spend Christmas with multiple people, even though it's not that one day. You can still celebrate Christmas like any point, really for the last month or so. Like all through December, you can celebrate Christmas the whole time. So it is a case of just sort of, even if one day doesn't necessarily go so well, you can make sure that you keep other people who make you happy around, keep in contact with them over like Messenger, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then just, make sure that throughout the whole Christmas, you can like enjoy it overall.
Yeah, it's important to not put, like you said, to put pressure on the 25th, because a lot of people don't even celebrate Christmas on the 25th either.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, for example, my mum works as a midwife and she's working 12 hours on Christmas Day. Yeah. So we're actually not going to have our Christmas till the 26th. And like, we probably won't do anything on the 25th. We might just chill in our house. So it's important to not concentrate and put too much pressure on making the 25th this amazing day.
Yeah, exactly. If you end up like celebrating Christmas at a different point, then you end up celebrating at a different point. Yeah, I would say that probably covers it all there.
Yeah.
So thank you both for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.